subject is the Rhode Island economy and the state of the Rhode Island economy at the end of 2012 and the prospects going forward. I think everyone in the state, certainly many people in the state, have taken a very close look at the economy this year. What are the issues? And I'm wondering if you have learned, or what you have learned more specifically, about the state of the economy currently, the Rhode Island economy.
Well, we know we're still languishing. Second highest unemployment, a lot of people looking for work, different issues with skills gaps, and where do we go from here. But we have great optimism, and probably more optimism at the end of the year than the beginning of the year, because we've learned more. We've learned more about what's going on in Rhode Island, where the pockets are, of people who are both positive, who are taking action, who are either reinvesting in their businesses or starting new businesses or embracing technology. But I think there's a little more sense that there's activity, not of the size or the breadth or the speed that I think we need to really pull us out of it, though.
You sponsored, as we all know, conference Make It Happen. So keying off that word happen, what happened this year in terms of public awareness, in terms of understanding, in terms of initiatives? What happened this year that perhaps has not happened in previous years?
Well, I think what happened this year is that people started to realize that we were very challenged on where our economy is, and that it was lasting long. I think everybody kept thinking, one more year, and this is both indicative of locally and nationally, and it's taking a long time. You hear things like, this one might be different. You hear terms like, that awful term of jobless recovery, which we don't know yet till we see. So I think the awareness was raised. I think the concern was raised that we might be in it for a while and it's tougher to get out of. But I also think during the year, two aspects that did raise that awareness. One was the Reinvent Rhode Island series, which in many ways, from our point of view, not only educated people, but was positive. I don't have to tell you that the press has been criticized in the past for being negative on everything.
And on some occasions, I think rightly so.
Right, and you can tell me what sells newspapers and what doesn't, but I think the spirit that we saw in Reinvent Rhode Island was, reinvent implies a commitment, implies an investment, but also talking about where there were pockets of excellence as well as challenge, and raising awareness in different issues. And I don't think all the issues that need to be addressed have been out there. And we did Make It Happen because we're inspired by this great state and its possibilities, but very frustrated by too much talk and not enough action. Taking rhetoric to action is the theme that we embraced. It's the theme that we will carry forward.
No one would dispute that there was great enthusiasm and a lot of great ideas that Make It Happen, which was unprecedented, certainly on the scale that we saw earlier this year. Let me play devil's advocate for a minute. Great ideas, great enthusiasm. A lot of people came out. The point has been made repeatedly that they even came out on the next day on a Saturday, which was a good weather day. Playing devil's advocate, why would we think all of that would go someplace where other initiatives perhaps have not?
Yeah, it's a great question. We did it because we were tired of having these big convenings and having reports that go on the shelf, and we had a convening and then put out a report. So we're very sensitive to that. I think one is because we're going to keep pushing it. So this was private sector driven. No slight to the public sector, but I think what was embraced is that there's no one person, there's no one entity, there's not one group that is going to solve this thing called the Rhode Island economy. And probably one of the biggest points we made is, the them is us. It's up to the private sector in its full realm. So we lament the loss of the large corporate sector that used to provide leadership. Okay, things have changed. And so in addition to large corporate leadership, we had hospital presidents committed, college presidents committed, entrepreneurs and small businesses. So I think the things that will make it different are the breadth of the groups that were involved, and the commitment, including ours, to keep pushing it. And so out of all these ideas, the only thing that will make it different is if 12 months after that happened, if we can look back, September of 2013 and look back and say, okay, what did happen? And that's the benchmark of what did happen. And so I think that commitment of not having more commissions and not having more studies and not lamenting one part of the economy. We know business climate's important, we know taxes important, but we still have a lot of great assets here. So the themes that came out of marketing the state, we will push. The themes of joblessness, skills gaps, training, we're going to keep pushing. On the other end, there were a lot of grassroots efforts that have sprung up. So whether it's a consortium of colleges and universities being put together to do economic development research, or it's medical device manufacturers who are now forming a group, or a New Angels group investing in medical technology, there was a grassroots part of that we had never seen before, that isn't waiting to be told you can do this, that isn't waiting for somebody to be a gatekeeper, and that was not our intent. So we're probably going to have to, we found ourselves probably continuing more in this kind of catalyzing leadership, challenging role to get things done. But we're committed to the action. We're just committed to the action.
You've said several times you're going to keep pushing it.
Yes.
Specifically how? What are we going to see coming out of here?
Well, first of all, from a big picture point of view, we continue to push urgency. That we're dismayed that there's not more of an outrage and an outcry every single day on having 58,000 people unemployed in this state, second highest in the country. That's just, we can't tolerate that. And we set out, if you look at the progress report that we did, the intent was not to do a plan for economic development. The intent was not to opine on structure of EDC or anything. But we kind of said, okay, let's have a couple of goals if we're going to pick goals. And one of them was to have an unemployment rate at or equal to or below the national average. Why should we be the second highest? To close the income gap, the family household income gap with Connecticut and Massachusetts. We're surrounded by some best practices to embrace those. And so that urgency and pushing. But what we will see, and we said we would invest $1 million above and beyond our grant making, is that in the first quarter of the year you will start seeing announcements of where those investments will go, and what will be, and some will be larger initiatives, and some will be very grassroots, small initiatives.
So that's in the first quarter of
Yeah.
2013, $1 million.
Yeah, it won't all go out in the first quarter, but you'll start to see those investments. Okay. We committed that $1 million for the year, for 12 months. I will commit that we will get the $1 million out in 12 months to jumpstart some things. And things may work, some may not. But we will continue, the proof's in the pudding, and we acknowledge that. We need to be able to point to these 10 things, these 6 things, these 8 things. But it got people a little more optimistic that it could be done. It got people, I think, to a mindset where everything doesn't depend on going to the public sector. We certainly intend to work closely, and hope everybody works closely with our elected officials, with EDC, whatever's there, and whoever's there we will work with. But it's not 100% dependent on that.
Your progress report came out a couple of months ago. I'm going to read from our commitment. Rhode Island Foundation is committing $1 million to be expended at our discretion in the next year to initiate, accelerate, and amplify these efforts.
Right.
You spoke to that generally. Can you give us any preview, any tease of what those might be, or
yeah, I think, one of them will be the marketing effort to come up with a kind of a grassroots approach to market the strengths, the attributes, the resources of Rhode Island, both internally and externally. We all know that we have a self-esteem challenge in the state of Rhode Island. And, in other states, you get run out of town if you say something bad about that state. Here, we tend to embrace that. And so, similar to other campaigns that have been done, we have to get on board the internal constituency before we go externally. And there's a lot of great things in this state. You know, you wrote about a lot of them.
Yeah.
We're talking about packaging them, more than just kind of slick buzzwords, but really embracing and people feeling proud of that. This consortium that I mentioned that's forming of the 11 colleges and universities to work together. We haven't really seen that. We've got these colleges and universities that all have strengths working together to provide information and research. And again, some of these other grassroots initiatives where people need a little capital, a little seed money to do things that will help jumpstart.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you're not a Rhode Island native. Is that correct? Or is that correct? I don't.
Yes, I only hesitate because I've been here a long time. If you're a Rhode Island native, I'm not.
How long have you been here?
Since 1971, when I came to go to college.
Okay, so you have a point of view from another state
I do.
prior to coming here.
Yes, and I also worked in New York a couple of years when I was with Fleet.
So perhaps you can offer an insight into why people in this state, and this is a particular pet issue of mine I've written about and I think about it a lot, as somebody else who's spent time, grew up elsewhere and has been here a long time now. Where does this negative down on self-esteem,
Well, I think
we're in Rhode Island and
Yeah.
you know what a horrible place this thing is?
Well, I think part of it's our size. So the small size is both an asset and a liability. And the asset is that you could convene this afternoon on any topic you wanted, all the way up through our congressional delegation. You could get all the people together. That's the strength. The downside is we're very provincial, that people don't always travel throughout the state. There's 39 cities and towns, although other states have a lot of cities and towns too. But we know a lot. So we know where you were and what you did. And if you're in a bigger state, you wouldn't necessarily know that. You wouldn't be bumping into the governor and the mayor and your U.S. senators on the street like you do here. But I think some of it just comes from our size. I think some of it's just a chip on our shoulder. You know, that we need to be that 5'6" guard that made it to the NBA, not the 5'6" guard that says everybody's taller. And we can do that. We have the strengths and weaknesses to do it. So what I'm saying is, I don't think there's any good reason other than that's how a lot of people have grown up.
The $1 million, is that separate from the innovation fellowships that you're also planning to?
Correct. Yes,
and there will be 2 of those again, is that
Two of
correct?
those.
Again.
We just got the applications in for those, and we'll be doing that in the spring. It's separate from our grant making. We do $28 to $30 million of grant making. It's completely separate from that.
Okay. Getting back again to the progress
Yep.
report and your commitment to $1 million, I'm going to quote again, it is our hope that others in the private sector will join us in providing financial support. Is that going to happen?
I don't know. I will admit we have not seen a groundswell of people rushing to that. What we're hopeful, though, is that some of these projects get developed, that we'll be able to seed them and we'll be able to get other support to carry them through. So that's the intent. The intent is to both challenge and inspire others to do that. But it wasn't a general call. We didn't put together, a fund of other dollars. People will see what some of the results are in some of the projects, and hopefully, as applicable, we'll bring them in. So if we do something with the design community, that we may go to some of the entities that would be logical to support that.
In all of the work that the foundation has done over the years, looking back a year ago, did you imagine you'd be sitting here talking about the economy as one of your
No, not
major
at all.
initiatives? I mean, that has not traditionally been.
Nope. No, in fact, a couple of years ago, we did a strategic plan and specifically did not include economic development. Our commitments were education, which we still think is the long-term ticket for economic development, healthcare, and then our work in the arts and the environment and human services and
Your
all the
core
rest, our core.
mission, yeah.
But more and more, not only do we get frustrated at not seeing enough energy and action and leadership, but it hits at what we do. And so, we work with generous individuals and companies and families who have resources, and we try and meet needs in the community. In this long-term economic downturn, the needs go up and the resources are strained, and we're smack in the middle So there was a certain logic or justification once we decided to do it, but it was really out of being very frustrated that we didn't see enough action.
There was not an epiphany, though. This was sort of a more gradual process over the last few months, or was there? Did you wake up one day and say, oh?
It was close. In the summer, we kind of, I don't know if it was an epiphany as much as we just don't see it getting done. We saw more meetings and more talk of reports and said, we're going to use our leadership and our convening and kind of our centrist position to get a group together to brainstorm. And so that was really the key, is we wanted to find out what a diverse group thought. It was not, a sage that was coming in, how you turn around an economy. It wasn't as simple as looking at 6 other states and seeing what we did. It was to get the resources, to get the brains and the committed people in Rhode Island to come up with ideas. It was inspired by the Innovation Fellowship, though. So because of that, we saw this outpouring of new ideas, of positive energy, and people that you didn't hear of. So the idea of not rounding up the usual suspects was very much a key, and that was part of if there was a light bulb going off, that was part of it. It was born with the Innovation Fellowship that we had the ability to get new ideas, and then it just took off. When we decided to do it, we thought it would be 50 to 75 people, and then it just grew. And we were heartened by small businesses and the entrepreneurs that wanted to get involved, and not just the traditional corporate leaders.
I mean, I think I can speak for the Reinvent team when I say that when we began at the beginning of this year, we certainly knew about the foundation, have written about the foundation in many of its missions, but this was not one that we foresaw either. And so the question would be, you have become a forefront, in the forefront. And are you comfortable personally with that role? And number 2, is the foundation comfortable? And this is a new role. It's a big mantle.
It is. It's a new role. We talked about it extensively with our board. We actually believe it's transformative for the foundation, that either from broadening our constituency of people that we're working with, and in both government and in the business community, as well as the community at large. But we're going to keep giving more money to Crossroads and the food bank if we don't fix this economy. That's not the goal. I mean, I'll say it and it will sound strange, but you'll understand it. We would like to see the food bank go out of business because of lack of need. It's a growth business right now, and that's just backwards. We just can't accept that. And so, yes, I think the foundation is comfortable with the mantle. I'm not sure we knew how big the mantle would be when we took it. Personally, having had a business background was different for a leader of the foundation. So having been in the sector made it a little easier. But also, we're willing to crack eggs too. We're willing to tell people you can't keep doing it the same old way, and we've been doing that. There was a lot of pressure when we put this together to do it the same old way, and we just said, no, this is going to be different. We'll try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Can you give an example of who you've told we're going to do this differently?
Yeah, I mean, we worked collaboratively with the chamber, with RIPAC, with the Commodores, very collaboratively. But we didn't just put together an event with their boards and broadened it. The other thing is, and you just recently did a segment, and I actually think you can go a lot further on it, we did not see diversity being addressed. There are a lot of venerable institutions in this state that have blinders on, that have not figured out who their customers, who their constituents, who their attendees are going to be. And we thought that was something different that we could bring to the table, that awareness. There's still too many times you go to a business event and you know what you see. You see everybody that looks like us. Predominantly male, predominantly whatever age you want to call that. Jessica, who was a co-leader in this, was great at pushing us to broaden that audience and stuff. And still not enough. We still need to address that more in a lot of the gaps. But personally, yeah, leadership, in my opinion, is creating the void. You don't wait to be anointed. You don't wait till somebody taps you on the shoulder. You step up and If there are other people that want to do it, they'll step up too, and if not, we just keep going.
Have you heard either internally, your own organization, your staff members, your donors, your board, or externally from the public at large, that you shouldn't be taking this role, that you're a philanthropy, and traditionally philanthropies of the foundation sort are arts and humanities and social justice, but not the economy? Has anyone said, you know what, Neil, this is not where you ought to be?
Not to any great extent. We started it earlier when we picked education and healthcare as our top initiative. So we took leadership positions in education, whether it was the school funding formula that we lobbied, or helping get the Race to the Top grants, or Teach for America coming. We did more publicly get out there on advocacy. Same thing on healthcare and the exchange and some of the changes that are coming in healthcare. So we had embraced the leadership and advocacy. The new part was the economy. And we've had much more response of, if not you, who's going to do it, embrace it. Little kernels of make sure you don't take on too much. More of that than the economy. It's hard to argue with providing leadership in the economy among our groups. But we did have people say, okay, you're going to make it happen. There'll be all these ideas, and then turn it over to somebody else. Well, guess what? There was nobody else to turn it over. So I think the ongoing part of it was not something that maybe we expected as much as we are now prepared to do. But we are prepared to run. And we're prepared to be as collaborative and to be partners. This is not a credit thing. This is not a, anybody or any group or whatever leader that wants to run with part of this, wonderful. We're glad to be a support organization, but we will provide the leadership too. And so leadership and advocacy above and beyond our normal grant making, above and beyond our normal fundraising, is now one of our core missions of the foundation.
It's quite a transformation in
a
year, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you have anything else?
You mentioned earlier the need for a greater sense of urgency.
Yes.
In the next 12 months, what are you going to do to raise the sense of urgency?
First of all, just keep saying it, which then kind of we think helps a little. Try and break down some barriers. One of the reasons it's been more work than we thought is that we keep peeling back the onion. So when we hear about job training, and you start talking with DLT and the Governor's Workforce Board, and you ask more questions, there's $41 million of federal funding that comes into the state for job training. Where is it? Well, it's a lot of different programs. And you keep digging and digging. At some point, something needs to be done. And so what we're asking is, where are the barriers that we can help get rid of? That there's an effort looking at regulatory environment. Leslie Tato, working for OMB now as part of the governor's office, on an accelerated basis that the governor approved, looking at regulatory issues across all state agencies. We are sitting down with this. What can we do to accelerate that? The Employ Rhode Island website that DLT runs is very challenging to navigate. And so we have said to legislative leadership, to the administration, what can we do? Is it a computer issue? Is it a programming issue? Is it a people issue that we can help support? And just keep challenging, what can we do to help eliminate some of these barriers that maybe somebody doesn't have the resources or the creativity to do? And then calling people out. Where is it? Where's the leadership? And I don't mean this is not a political comment, but it's, corporate leaders, where are you? What are you doing? One of our heroes is John Hazen White, we've written about. And you look at the job training issue. And he added 50 people last year. And you know what he says. I don't want to hear about the job skills issue, just train them. He hired 50 people, he worked with CCRI, and he trained them. There are companies that contract with New England Tech to do training. Old-fashioned internships, mentorships, and apprenticeships need to be formulated. The education, we need to keep that in front. Long-term, our public education system is the ticket to economic development. That is clear. There's no doubt about it. We need to train people. They need to be job ready when they come out, whether they're going to college or not. We need to look at alternatives. The term alternative pathways has got a lot of use, but not everybody needs to go to 4 years of college and graduate. Most people do need more than maybe a high school diploma. But in between, there's a lot of skills that you can get, and there's a lot of training you can get. And we need to match up those jobs and go where they are. And I do believe it's more than just healthcare and IT. Manufacturing that we haven't talked about, and you talked about in one of the articles the decline, but you also found several thriving manufacturers in the state. And Jess and I have toured many of these manufacturers, and the shop floor is full of people that are over 50 years old. And part of that, and this is another sense on the urgency that we're going to push, and I don't know how to quite put it, but it's the psychology of work. You know, everybody raised their kids now to go to college. Nobody said, I want you to go work in the factory, or I want you to work in tourism or whatever. Those are good jobs. Those are honorable jobs. We need to value those. You know, it's not the dirty old shop floor anymore. We literally saw Brown and Sharp machines with a computer stuck on it running. Even in hospitality, you know, you hear low-paying jobs. Well, the manager of that restaurant is doing really well. The manager of that hotel is doing pretty well. And so we need to get back to where jobs are honorable, you progress in your career, and it's not, and I don't mean to downplay the value of a college education, but we need to broaden it for people. We have too many gaps. There's a shortage of plumbers in Rhode Island. You know, that just doesn't make any sense, you know.
No, it doesn't.
You know, think about if you needed to hire a plumber this afternoon and how much you're paying and where he or she lives.
Yeah.
And you will figure out that that's not a bad gig. And we're not doing that. So it's back in the technical schools. It's back in the junior highs about students thinking about what's out there, a variety of careers. It's having manufacturers talk about what's going on in the future that they see. You start seeing these little trends of manufacturing coming back from overseas. And it comes back if it makes sense, if there's design involved. You know, I had a long career in a bank, and I saw the demise of the textile industry and the jewelry industry. Well, that doesn't explain Alex and Ani. Jewelry industry is not dead here. Marketing, it's design, it's creativity. It's not a foot press banging out stampings anymore. And I think we missed a couple of decades of making some of those transitions. You know, nobody has a crystal ball, obviously, but we missed. There was a gap. We have catching up to do. But that's the sense of urgency. We need to run fast, and we can. You can find it. You can be from Westerly to Woonsocket. You know, I know you used to have different bureaus in different places. The truth is, you can be here and get out there and see what's going on. So we need to harness the attributes. We need to harness the strengths and maximize them. And we are astounded, and we were informed by our other work at the foundation. So you talked about our traditional core business. A lot of what we've done has been convening in the past. And it's not any different on economic development than it is convening land trusts or convening art organization. It's getting people together to work together. And we're going to probably promote more of a buy local approach, more than fruits and vegetables, more than Main Street. Commercial. So if I'm a manufacturer at one end of the state and I need to buy corrugated boxes, I can find the manufacturer of corrugated boxes who's in Rhode Island. And yes, everybody needs to be competitive, but we don't know. Very few people can catalog the strengths of the state. We've been talking to people all over. There's a lot of aha moments. 11 colleges and universities. You know, the pockets of excellence that we have at those universities, from a pharmacy and oceanography school to business schools to law schools to medical schools, how to bring all that together. Our ports, you know, Quonset, amazing if you've been down to Quonset, almost as amazing as the Providence port and what we do there. We're bringing in cars at Quonset, one of the largest importing ports for cars, and we're exporting old cars in Providence to other countries. People don't put all this together and see how We have these strengths. And so we think there's a story here that hasn't properly been embraced and told about what is this thing called Rhode Island. You know, we're one of 6 states to win 2 Race to the Top grants in the United States. I've gotten to go to meetings with the other states. We're sitting there with Massachusetts and New York and other states. We're a leader in the healthcare exchange. Now, there's a lot of politics that people have different opinions, but we're a leader in these things. And we're a leader because of people, because of a Deborah Gist or because of the lieutenant governor or whatever. We need to pick and choose, and we need to go push those. The legislature, you know, we've had extensive discussions with them. I think that they're prepared to act on different things. It's not simple, you know. What is it? The needs of the many need to be outweigh the needs of the few. Is that Star Trek or something? I think Mr. Spock. That we do need to look at what does Rhode Island need and what's best for the state of Rhode Island. And I think there are a lot of people willing to do that. We just get a better sense of optimism. You know that one of the stories you could do is go find people who've moved here 5 years ago, and they'll tell you all the great things about the state of Rhode Island. You asked if I was a native. We stay away from the natives are the ones that will tell you all the baggage. But people who have, we meet people who come into the state, whether they're living in Providence or Little Compton or wherever, who want to be an hour from Boston, 3 hours from New York, and near the water. There's only one place in the United States you can live to do that, and it's Rhode Island.
Good point.
They put a dot and draw the circle, and then they move to the circle. And that's with taxes. That's with energy costs. That's with a lot of things. Sorry.
The optimism, it was the first thing you talked
Yes.
about. You said at the end of the year you have a better sense of optimism than at the beginning of the year. Is that because you're more aware of good things that were already happening, or more good things are happening now at the end of the year than at the beginning?
Yes, I think they're interrelated. I think, yes, we're more aware of good things and good people. I think it all goes back to the people. And some of those people, again, you look at the entrepreneurial community, you look at some of the manufacturing, you look at the education, there's more activity in those areas. And we think that the combination of things and that positive vibe, and some of it I make it happen, jump-started some of that. And people seem to feel that they don't have to wait, that they're a little more empowered. But yes, we do see more activity, and with activity will come better results. But not turnaround. I would not, we're not Pollyanna on this. We just see it heading in the right direction. We do think it needs to be accelerated, though, just really accelerated. We have not missed recessions, but we lag upturns, and we can't afford to keep lagging upturns. And I think there's areas where we could be a leader.
Well, thank you very much, Neil, for coming in.